this is Karen with the Elastic Army Band, and look who's in the house. We're so excited tonight about this panel because guess what? We're going to talk about the KAINOS wave and the future of music. So I'd like to introduce Bryan Culpepper, Steve Hampton, Laura Seaflow, Tommy Kodel, and Daniel Lovett, and my cohort, Mike Harahoss, on tonight. We're so excited. Justin Abraham made a post, you guys. I don't know if you saw it. And he talked about he had been praying for years about music and he knew something was going to start shifting. And so he's starting to see the music, even around his realm, starting to change. Laura, you probably got some insight on that because you just went with Justin on an interview. So I go, what a great, great topic to talk about. And let's get the musicians together because there's a lot of shows out here today. Nobody's talking to the music about the music. And I believe that, and I guess y'all guys will be with me on this one. The music does set up the atmosphere, no matter who's talking. It is going to be the music that opens that atmosphere up. So these guys are allowed to have full reign of the show, wide open, radical surf dogs that they are. And so here we go. So who wants to start first?
I'll pick up where I started a couple
Okay.
minutes ago. Ever since I started playing in church praise bands and all that in the mid '90s, I noticed people like Stephen Curtis Chapman would come up with a couple hits. And for example, a lot of musicians would copy that. They wouldn't echo him, for example, but they would come up with something very similar. And that genre is carried on to this very day. Somebody will come up with a massive hit like Mercy Me with I Can Only Imagine that started a whole wave because they hit every genre across every musical realm with that song. But I noticed a lot of Christian groups like Jesus Culture, they pick up on certain songs that have been hits and they try to come up with that same tone, same sound. And it's kind of getting old, from where I sit, because I've been playing guitar a long time. And, I pick up on these idiosyncrasies over the years. And when I started hearing about the wave, the new music that is coming about, I wanted to get involved in this because God has been working on me to really be creative with different tones and sounds that nobody else is doing. I mean, you recognize the flangers, the multiple echoes, and all that stuff, but I'm trying to come up with something different because I feel the Lord is really leaning on me, but I'm really excited about people wanting to change all that, and that's why I'm here tonight. I want to hear what everybody else is saying, or if they're at least seeing the same thing.
Yeah, we want to honor too. We're not saying it's a bad thing.
No,
We're honoring the music that's been, but now it's time to move on and not stay even stuck in the worship realm. I mean, I've brought this up before on the show, and you guys, you've heard me talk about it one on one, but like venues, a lot of places we may not get into or whatever. Can you get those words up on the screen? We don't want to put the words on the screen because you're not really worshiping if you got to sit there and look at the screen like that, you know? And so we always say, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it because everyone has a sound and a song inside of them. You sing your own song and we just arc together. You arc with us, we arc with you. And boy, that's a game changer just right there. It's just trying to break through that little religious spirit of stuff right there. Have y'all seen that? I mean, I know
Yeah,
you've been through it.
I think Mike hit on something for me that's a big deal. You mentioned Stephen Curtis Chapman, and when you have these guys who are, uh, for lack of a better word, they're professionals.
Yeah.
They're in the business, and when I say business, and I know Steve and some of you guys understand what I'm saying. It's still business. At the end of the day, it's either country music business or Christian music business, but it's still business. And so I think what happens is that something gets lost in that, because if it's a big hit, like I Can Only Imagine, like he talked about, which was huge. This song was absolutely huge. So other people began to, and this is where I was kind of want to go with this. Other people begin to, instead of their own identity, their own organic sound coming forth, they tend to, well, it worked for Stephen, let's see if it'll work for us. And I think one of the biggest things that I see happening is that Christian music is kind of it's changing to more of, instead of Christian music, just organic sound. And so for me, when I go to my studio, that's what I'm looking for, is just an organic, pure, innocent, pure sound. And when I feel that's right, then I just reach over and hit record and see what happens. So I think what Mike's talking about, it's hard to follow stuff like that. You know, I mean, so for me, I think one of the shifts that we are seeing is people are beginning to go less after a Stephen Curtis sound or a Mercy Me sound or whatever sound, and just come from the heart, come from that place of your true essence and your true identity, and roll from right there. Okay, so there's 2 cents.
I love it, Bryan. I echo that. I think it's what we've seen happen so often, and I know you saw this in Nashville and with the guys that you were working with, and being a songwriter yourself, you probably felt that industry pressure to come up with the next big hit or whatever it might be. And I think what Mike's saying is that there's a sound out there that we've been prophesying about, we've been hearing about. Hey, there's a new song, there's a new sound, there's a new wave of music that's for now. It's not just something that's going to shift things temporarily, but it's going to make a massive shift. And you know, before the show started, we were talking together, and I think that we're at a nexus point. We're at a point where things are going to shift and change dramatically. And some of those nexus points in history happened because of technological changes. You know, the invention of various, imagine what it was like before there was a stringed instrument. People had bows, they were shooting animals with them, bringing home the bacon. And the next thing you know, somebody plucks that bow and it makes a sound, and they go, ooh, that's kind of cool. Do that again. In fact, let's do that tonight at the campfire while we're finishing our dinner. And a lot of those instruments came that way. You know, a lot of the instrumentation, was just watching a special on pedals. I think it's called the Pedal Movie, about how many of these pedals that we're taking for granted now, you know, distortion, wah-wahs, fuzz boxes, things like that, came as a result of accidents. And there was a guy in Nashville that had some tubes and some diodes and transistors in his recording console that caused a raspy sound in the voice and the guitar. And eventually they fixed that, and they wrecked the sound. They wanted to go back for that sound, and thus began the very first guitar pedal. And the rest is history. I mean, they've continued to do all kinds of wild things with those. And so, you know, those kinds of technological inventions and advances, just going from tape to digital, I don't know whether that's necessarily an advance or a regression, but some of these things now allow for different kinds of musical expression, different kinds of ways to put music together. And I think we're in that place very similar to what it was like when the Beatles were around. You know, over 2,000 bands playing quartet type music, rock and roll in England when the Beatles emerged. They were one of many, and they suddenly distinguished themselves because of the sheer nature of how they did what they did. But their sound wasn't that unique in the day. It was fairly common. And I think, Mike, we're at a place where we're going to start seeing some new sounds, some new things. You know, Bryan and I are working on some things with this plant music that Bryan introduced me to. And we're looking at some next level stuff here where plants, and we can get into this more uh, eh, as the discussion goes on, but mixing together plants and music. What I'm finding, because I just got off tour and I was touring with some plants, I was touring specifically with a peace lily, and it was pretty wild, some of the stuff that happened, and a little tiny fern. And I was playing for a group of people one night, and the fern started leading and I started following. And then when I took off, the plant started responding to me. And if I would move up the neck of my guitar, the plant would match me note for note. It was wild. It
Wow.
was absolutely wild. I think that's on somewhere on my Facebook page. We recorded it live, and it was something that was next level. So I think that's what we're doing, is we're beginning to gather some resources and look at things, and there's a dissatisfaction deep in my chest that I have felt for a long time. And Mike, I hear that coming from you as well, that it's not just about playing the same old stuff. It's about what can make the new sound. What's it gonna take to move into that next thing?
Can I suggest that in my observation, it's about becoming the sound and playing and being seated and releasing your sound from the sounds of heaven as you're seated there, seeing them, releasing them, becoming them. And that's the shift, like, that I've noticed. I can tell when someone's playing from heaven, when someone's seated, they know who they are, they know their seat, they're, either parked in the council of the sounds of heaven, and they're engaging they're releasing what they're seeing. And so that's the change, that the shift that I've noted is that people are becoming the sound instead of just releasing sounds. They're actually becoming the instrument.
It's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. If I can interject too, I've had a lot of thoughts just pop up since we started. I'm just rolling. I loved, Laura, what you just shared, because that, like, my mind was going there too. It's like, we need to be connecting with our family among the host of heaven. And like, what another term for that, is the living Akashic records. And they have musical histories of their own. Where do you think Beethoven got it from? He was connected. He was jacked in. Like, I believe every good, gifted musician has been, whether they recognize it or not cognitively. I believe that it flows from inspiration, intuition, and that's your connection to the whole of the family of heaven. And there's musical people coming in and sharing their skills and their songs with you. I once had a dream where I heard this most amazing, beautiful song, and they're like, "Oh, you like it? You can have it. You can have it." And I'm like, "Well, I gotta go back there to actually, like, what was that song again? If you said I could have it, like, could I write that? Can you share it with me again? Because I didn't write it down. I tried a little bit, but this is where some of our songs are coming from. I felt that, like, our album up there, Reflect Love. It's like we write from inspiration. It's like, and sometimes it's, but doing things with excellence as well. I'm like, I just want to share this. This is like, people have to know that you as the artist care. Like, you're offering them, this is my gift to you. Doing things with excellence, like playing the shaker from your heart, on that album. I actually once got a compliment. Somebody texted me, "Hey, I'm listening to your album. I really love the shaker on track 5." I'm like, I know, isn't that fun? Like, that shaker. And it's like, I had doubts about that shaker, and I was like, gonna redo it with something synthetic from my computer program. I tried it. I'm like, no, the life just drained out of it. Like, no, put the raw, your heart, playing that shaker from your heart. Doing things with excellence. Like, even like Gunger comes to mind. What an amazing band who put their heart and passion into honing excellence as this gift. Whatever stream, how that music comes out of you. Like, another thought that came to mind, a memory of, I was in a nursing home once. This old man walked up to me and he says, "I've really been enjoying the NAR music." And I'm like, I have no idea what NAR means. NAR music? I'm like, okay. I had to go home and look it up. The New Apostolic Reformation. He was talking about Jesus culture. He was talking about what was coming out of Bethel. You know, this worship music that is so amazing, and there's so much coming out of there. Learning to honor that and appreciate it. But even having an awakened heart to where you're like my friend Joe, who could like go into ecstasy and worship at an off key, really poor rendition of a worn out old hymn that, you know, like that's where our heart should be, ultimately as well.
So good.
Awesome.
Because it's not what you sound like, it's what you carry.
Yeah.
Right. So you can get whacked on a little old lady who's ascended singing Jesus Loves Me. I can get completely whacked if she's seated and knows who she is and she's singing from the heart of the Father. Some of the most powerful worship sessions I've ever been in, have had no instruments. We were just becoming the instrument. And poor Jason, I think, was playing anything, a trash can, he was playing an armoire, you know, like anything he can just get his hands on. But we all got completely slayed because we were all releasing what we were carrying. So
yes. Oh, I so resonate with that. That's how my journey started, was seeing somebody who knew who they were, who was seated in the heavenlies, who's standing up there just so full of Jesus, playing this 3-chord song. It was simple enough, but just he just radiated Jesus. It was actually at a Calvary Chapel down in Texas, and Chuck Smith was even there, you know, for that. And here's this man he brought along, this young man, and he inspired me to get into music. Like, that's me. That's my future. I want that, you know, just to be filled with Jesus and share that kind of life.
You know, years ago, Chuck and I were talking. Was the first Calvary Chapel pastor in Hawaii back in the day, in the mid 70s, early 70s. And Chuck and I were talking about music. And I said, what's it like to be working with all these musicians in the studio? Because he would often visit the studio, which was just down the street from the church. And he said, well, it's frustrating to me because sometimes they're going for perfection and I'll listen to the first take and the anointing is on it. The presence is on it. The feel is there. And then they'll be going for musical perfection. And he goes, I finally said maximum of 10 takes and that's it. He goes, I own the studio, so knock it off. He goes, if you can't get the first 3, you're struggling. So move on to the next song. And I thought that was an interesting perspective for Chuck, but he recognized that striving for the perfect sound is not the game. It's what Laura says. It's take your seat. You sit within yourself. You sit within the heavens. You express something, and then let the Spirit fill that. And then let it go. Let it stand on its own. And so I learned so much from Chuck about recording as well as just the presence of the Lord. And of all the pastors I've ever known, Chuck enjoyed worship the most. He would go into these, he wouldn't call them ecstasies, but you could see it. His eyes would roll back in his head and his hands would go up and his head would roll back. And he would just sit there when the presence of the Lord was there, whether it's people just singing tones or people playing instrumentally, it didn't matter to him. If God was there in the presence of the music, he was into it.
Steve, I remember when we did our first demo stuff when we got to Nashville, and there was an engineer, I can't remember the guy's name, but he, of course, we had the hired gun musicians in there, you know what I'm saying? But this guy was so intuitive as an engineer. We didn't know it, but he recorded, and the musicians didn't know it. It's kind of like what you were just saying, but he would record everything they were doing all the time. They didn't even know he was doing it. And much of the time, that was what ended up on our first demo tracks, was stuff they didn't even plan on doing, because like you said, they'd go back and try to do another thing. It just didn't feel it, didn't feel the same. so the engineer would keep the original that he recorded that they didn't even know he recorded. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're kind of getting back a little bit to, I remember a service that we had one time, guys, when I was pastoring and leading worship. Very quickly, one morning, prophetic worship broke out. It was absolutely amazing. We're talking about years ago, but anyway, we had a young lady that played the flute, and as we were playing, I don't remember what song, of course, we were doing at the time, but it was a slow worshipful type song, and this young lady, she was probably 16 at the time, 17 years old, and she starts playing, and I'm just saying that the Spirit of the Lord rode in on what she was playing. It was unlike anything I've ever heard since then, to be honest with you. I looked over at her. I got the whole band to just kind of stop playing, and she was in a world of her own, guys. Her eyes was closed, but she wasn't in Kansas anymore. You know what I'm saying? So she was just doing what she was created to do. Her breath, that I've always thought that the instruments that your breath goes through, it opens the door quicker, I think, because the pneuma, the breath of God goes through the instrument. But anyway, for about 15 minutes, this young lady just played. She became one with her instrument. She became one with what she was created to do for that moment. And it was the most incredible thing I've ever listened and been through, been a part of in my life. And the thing is that, we did hundreds of services after that, but it never, and after the 15 minutes was over, guys, I was like, okay, let's go home. There's nothing we can do now. Let's just go home and enjoy what the Father gave us this morning. But my point is Laura, you're right. She became one. She became that. And so it's just one of those organic moments that happens. Another thing, really quick thing I did was when I was doing some years ago recordings in my studio on the keyboard, and I would go back. If I hit a wrong note, I would go back and fix it, of course, because I wanted it production perfect, because that's how I grew up. I was a perfectionist. And so I was rewinding everything, trying to get back to where the mark was, where I knew I hit the wrong note. And it's just as I was about to fix it, Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, don't fix that. Do not touch that. Someone needs to hear that note at that particular time. And so I just kind of like, oh. So I just started backing off of that. And I wasn't, from that point on, I wasn't so much into production perfect anymore. It was more like, okay, I want the vibrational, essence of this to come out. And so that's it. To me, it goes back to an organic, knowing who you are, being who you are, not being afraid to step into that, as weird or as crazy as it sounds. Just jump, man. Just go ahead and jump without the parachute. He's got you.
Yeah, Bryan, I can relate to that one because hey, I can be my own worst critic. Okay, record, man, I don't like it, I gotta do it again. So Tommy, how about you? I know you got something that you want to share with us.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting a lot of this conversation myself, because like I'm a perfectionist as well, and then sometimes it slows me up. And but I think that's what especially in the Christian realm is like what music has been missing is the substance, is the higher frequency, the presence of God. And that's what the world needs. That's what people want in music. They want to feel the substance on it. And for us, I think in the Christian music, that's where we need to step it up. We need to get that inspiration and just release that in the presence of God, and then get it out there to the world. And that's what people want. That's what we need to give them. And just getting in that place of intimacy and putting that on the track. So when people hear that, we could bring them into that level.
Yeah. Tommy does a lot of work with Paula Mengucci, and they do a lot of Ascension stuff. So I think Tommy comes out with some wild stuff
Sure.
from that place. And so, Mike, did you? I know you and I have talked um, about being an echo. We don't want to be echoes of somebody else. We see that a lot. And who was the one that we heard that from? Oh, golly. Who did we
Can't
hear that
remember.
from? Anyway, you would know him if I mentioned his name in the worship realm. And he's been talking about that a lot. And then Leonard Jones, not about a couple years ago, he put something on Facebook. Are y'all familiar with Leonard?
Hmm.
Leonard Jones says, "When's the music going to change?" I was like,
Yeah.
boy, we just put it out there.
Well, and
And
he was so much a part of the change back in the day. I mean, they were
mhm,
doing stuff, a lot of people think, oh, these guys are just, he and Don Potter and
mhm,
Susie, that they're just, you know, extra
mhm,
super talented people. But I mean, he and Don have been in professional music for years. They both have directed the symphonies in their
mhm,
town. Both been involved. I mean, Don's been Winona's musical director for years and years and years. I worked with the Judds and all that. So some of
mhm.
these guys really come out of this secular background. And you know, but I do want to comment, Brian, a little comment about breath, because what that means, Brian, for those of us that play guitars, Mike and I are going to have to go break out our Peter Frampton talk boxes so we can get our breath into our guitars.
Either that or put a harmonica like Billy Joel, man. Just strap a harmonica on, man.
There we go. Just killing things.
Hey,
Yeah.
so what do y'all think about like y'all are doing plants? So suppose we integrated you in our music. What would that sound like?
It could be it could be awesome. Like the thing is, the plants, and Brian will tell you this a lot, that the plant, you don't lead the plants. Like you got to make room for a new chick singer in the band, because the plants will definitely lead, and they love doing that. Oh, sorry, tried to call me.
There was a dimensional change.
There was a frequency.
Yeah.
Okay, Karen, let me throw in really quickly one thing before we move on, maybe a little bit. I remember it's been a long time ago, but I was covering a lot of people's songs, kind of like we've been talking about already.
Mhm.
And I will never forget the day that Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, "Why do you want to cover someone else's creativity?"
Yep.
And I was like, "I don't. I can. We all can, but why should we?" And so that's when I began to kind of branch out and just go into the studio
Mhm.
myself and diffuse some essential oils and have some low lights and just whatever, and see what happens. And it's been amazing. It really has.
Yeah, because everybody has a song inside. So,
Absolutely.
and if you're built for that, then why are you echoing somebody else's sound? Yeah.
I
Laura,
mean,
could you speak to the creative process that you are engaged with? So when you get a sense, that does it start in your heart, like you get a sense of a sound or a sense of a song or a sense of wanting to express something, and could you describe your process a little bit?
Um, so I've been challenging myself to be almost 100% spontaneous, even in the studio. And I had this encounter with, I had a 48-hour encounter. And during that process, I met someone from the Cloud of Witnesses, was Zephaniah, and he took me to a place called the Council of the Sounds of Heaven, and basically explained to me how that you could be seated there and you could play from there, and that the sounds, everyone, as we know, has a scroll, right? And there, he explained to me that there are a set of frequencies that are given to each of us, almost like a soundtrack to our, if our scroll was the movie, it would be like a soundtrack. And they don't all have to be, he said, they don't all have to be musical notes, like Nancy Cohen's is the sound of all creation groaning, right? And he took me back in my own life and showed me those times when something would resonate with me so deeply, a frequency, a sound, a song, and showed me how it was, I was actually hearing part of my soundtrack. So what I personally do, when I don't even call myself a worship leader anymore, I just call myself an ascension leader and then a minister of music, because my goal is to take people up and then just disappear and let them have an encounter. And it worked out great for me because frankly, no one ever sang to any of my songs anyway. I tried being a worship leader and no one would sing. So
did you have the words up, Laura?
even with the words. So yeah, so I just try to disappear, but sometimes I'll get a complete download. And I came from the I lived in Hollywood. I had, I've had several record deals and publishing deals and the whole shebang. And so I really had to be deconstructed because, I mean, I used to believe that you had to be like tormented soul to even write anything, and you had to be high. So I had to be completely deconstructed on every level. And so my process is I literally ascend, I take my seat, and the way it works for me is probably different than everyone else, and because he speaks to us in whatever language we understand. I see almost like a screen and I see notes as I'm engaging, and I just kind of release what I see. And sometimes I sound like an 80-year-old Native American woman, because I have also begun to call forth. Holy Spirit just taught me how to call forth mantles and sounds and frequencies out of my DNA. And, I'm indigenous, Native American, and I'm also, got Hebrew. So I would begin to pull those forward. And the way I pulled them forward was he had me for a year sing in tongues an hour a day. And those seem to draw out some of the sounds and frequencies that I release. So that's just
okay.
Thanks.
Tommy. Now, Tommy, that's what you're going to have to start doing. Rather than
Yeah.
There you go. Mike, I know you had another question that you wanted to ask.
Yeah, I kind of veered off of that because it got answered through various folks talking. I guess for me, back in the era of Whiteheart and Petra and all that, mentoring me and understanding what I could do in Christian rock. But since I started really getting into, and Karen was a big part of this, leading me into my true identity, exploring the blueprint. It has opened my eyes up to where the music comes out in me. I sit and write guitar parts. I practice hours a week, and one thing leads to another. So I'll present a whole array of things that I believe that the Spirit has laid on me, and I'll present it to the rest of the band, and they go from there. And I know, because I got to sit back and think to myself, that's not the old me. you know, playing Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and Black Sabbath, going through all that stuff back in my band days and until now. And it's like, wow, I'm excited to who I think I'm going to become, you know, and it's been a big metamorphosis for me, you know, getting into identity and who I am as a guitar player.
Yeah,
And
because Mike's sound is way different than he was 4 years ago.
yeah, back then I was kind of high speed metal. And, you know, I took lessons back in 1967. That's how long I've been playing. And, you know, a classically trained mother on piano and violin. So there was a set of, there was a format that I had to go by that was very strict, you know, coming up in that kind of household. But I would say in the past 5 years, you know, kind of metamorphosing with Karen into this, wow, there's been a drastic change in the way I look at music, period. And, you know, getting to the echo thing, I don't remember, I know you and I have talked about who started the echo phrase, but
Rick Pino did.
yeah, Rick Pino. And I like what he does, but getting into originally who I am, which fits with Karen, which fits with Dave, and we use a drum machine. We can't find a drummer, and that's okay.
We're a band of three.
Yeah, the
Bench of
machine
three.
doesn't talk back or give us a hard time, so that works. But
Doesn't slow down either.
right, it keeps perfect time.
Perfect timing, Steve.
That's a beautiful place to be.
That's
But
awesome.
just developing your own format and the spirit is just incredible. It's not like anything I've gone through in all these decades of playing guitar. So it's a new move. You know, I've been hearing about the wave. So looking at it from a spirit man point of view, that wave is real. And you know, you guys have been talking about it for a while now. It has to start from within here. And, you know, the actual heart of the matter. And wow, some of the stuff that comes out of what we're doing, I sit and listen to our music every morning just as a worship. And we're not soaking music by no stretch to be doing that. And I love soaking music, but I just get into the instrumentals and Karen, what she writes. It's wow, it's cool. I don't mean to do this, but
No, that's
it's
awesome.
cool how the Lord's working through us. And I totally enjoy what I'm hearing so far with this panel that we've got. And we've definitely got to do more of this because there's so much more that we can add to each other's spirit and communication and gaining understanding. Even though we have different genres of music, guitar is guitar, drums are drums, music is music. That will never change. The basic format of the music will never change, but the way it's presented will. And I'm all about that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
when we're having our first concert and we all get on stage together, freaky sounds.
Love it. I would love it.
Wouldn't that
You
be
know,
wild?
years ago in about the year 2000, Nancy and I started my wife Nancy. I always have to clarify that. Otherwise, people go, which Nancy?
Yeah.
About 10 of them in my life that are active. But my wife Nancy and I started something called the Circle of Worship, and this was before Worship Circle had come out. That was a Christian worship group. We just called it Circle of Worship because of a vision that I'd had, and it was about a couple of dozen churches would send people to it, and it was a largely instrumental time where you know the people would come and they wouldn't know what to expect, and we would just play. And sometimes we would do songs that they knew, but most of the time we just did, as Laura was saying earlier, we did songs where people were not familiar with the song, and so they wouldn't sing along, but they would enter into it, and we had to model what that meant to enter in to the music. And then one of the guys, and he was one of the introverts in the group. He said, I just feel like God's speaking to me about a wordless form of worship. And this was, there was some soaking stuff back then, but there wasn't a lot of it that was going on. And so we tried this thing where we almost used duct tape on our mouths, except we started using our mouths as instruments rather than singing words. We would just do toning and make sounds. But we went through a period of time of the wordless worship, and then that evolved into something where we just started seeing so many kingdom kinds of engagements happening, and the presence of angels and saints walking into the room from the cloud of witnesses and things like that. And this went on for a full decade or longer. And it was exciting to see that. I look at some of the instrumental sounds and some of those moments, they're like the Selah moments within even some of my favorite secular songs. And that inspiration came from somewhere. If you follow some of the artists, and it really doesn't matter which genre, because they're in every genre, but some of the guys that I have followed over the years that you couldn't drag me to a concert these days, because I produced so many thousands of shows over the years. It has to be somebody like Sting or Peter Gabriel or Bruce Hornsby to get me to leave my house to want to go, do that, or Pat Metheny, or, there's a number of different artists that I would go see live, but, sitting in a chair listening to music is not my idea of a good time anymore. Used to be, but it's not anymore. But I would listen to some of these things, and some of them, somebody asked me the other day, who do you turn to for healing music? And I surprised them. I said, Peter Gabriel, Sting. I just started rattling off these artists, and they were like, well, you don't listen to any Christian music? I said, well, I listen to music. You asked me what healing music I listen to, the music that's brought healing to me. And it's been that. And I remember Bryan and I were together in their home in Mississippi, and I had my guitar and he had his grand piano, and we started just playing tunes. And it was everything from Hornsby's "That's Just the Way It Is" to Elton John and Bernie Taupin's "Benny and the Jets." And the Spirit of the Lord filled the place. It was crazy. And I love that. I don't make a distinction anymore between secular music and Christian music. I just call it music. And for me, that kind of has set me free from making judgments on genres and judgments on, anything really. It's opened up my musical parameters quite a bit.
Does anyone feel like music is almost returning to its original function?
Oh yeah. It always circles back around. I've noticed. Yeah, in talking about the Beatles and the Dave Clark Five, and even the early Stones, that style of music resurfaces every 10 or 12 years or so, and everything does.
But what I'm talking about is more returning to its original ancient function, which was almost like the tuning of our bodies, our organs, our soul. Like, Steve, what you do is with the bowls, right? It's tuning. It's right. Tuning our gaits. It's tuning our bodies back to their original intention. And it's almost like there was a time where music was always about that. I mean, David and Saul, it was always had some function that never seemed to be about entertainment, unless there was something I just didn't know about for, in the ancient, I didn't know if they had rock concerts. But the point is it's almost feeling like God is returning it back to what he originally intended it to be for. And that can come out or that can be packaged in any form. That's irrelevant. It's the function, it's not the form, right?
Exactly. It really is. You're hitting on something that's, Bryan and I've talked about it a lot. It's a heartbeat for us that we come back to that place of realizing what music can do to energetically tune our body, our soul, and even our spirit. And, you know, I just finished, like, just about an hour before we started, or actually 30 minutes before we started, I did an online vibrational sound therapy. So it was virtual. I had somebody laying on a massage table in their home. I was here in my studio where I'm sitting right now, and I was able to virtually do an hour-long session for them. They got up, they were whacked. I mean, I literally said, and they may be watching, but I said to them, let's not talk today. We'll talk tomorrow after you've had a chance to recover. Because you like, her only decision was marinara or Alfredo. I mean, she was a noodle. And I think that's something that all of us are starting to realize. And Bryan and I, again, without giving away any secrets, we're working on some projects with the plants, because all of you right now are sitting in a home or in a building somewhere that outside where you are, there are plants. You may even have some potted plants inside the house. And those plants are singing, whether they're hooked up to a machine that translates that into an algorithm that you can actually hear as music, or whether it's just the frequency of the plant and you're not hearing it. And there's the rocks and the crystals and the stones, and there's the music of the spheres, all of the stars, everything. There's music happening. There's frequency happening all the time. And if you could actually translate and hear the sound of the individual cells, the trillions of cells within your body, if you could hear the symphony that's going on in you, it would blow your mind. So there's so many things, Laura, that opens up in terms of our discussion, that we are energetic beings. I'm wearing this shirt on purpose, and I don't know whether it's backwards like it is on my screen or not, but, you know, be the energy you want to attract.
Oh, I love it.
To me, be the music that you want to play, be the music that you want to attract. And that's really what you were saying earlier, I think, about sitting in your seat and releasing the sound.
Absolutely.
Because we are talking about the future of the music. And so what Laura's saying is, whatever's inside of you, I think I'm hearing her right, whatever's inside, it's going to come out. And then it's going to start developing a wave. And a wave is, I mean, I'm on this arc thing right now, arcing with stuff. So that's what I hear. I think I'm hearing her say, because Laura, I've been looking at your post the last couple of days. Cute dogs,
my
by
plants,
the way.
did you know my plants, my garden? I've been singing over them and brooding over them.
But you put up some images of sound drawings a couple days ago. And so you did, I think, 2 different ones. So you were just showing the patterns that would come out of certain sounds. So what do you, I mean, explain that to people who might be with us that might not have heard that yet.
Are you talking about the schematic I found of the different frequencies, how they begin to change?
Yeah.
Well, I just personally was shown that, you know, as we are being retuned by his frequency, that it will eventually untwist our DNA, and it will become the ladder that he can come up and down on and out of. So I've just been he's just been heavily on me about tuning. My new track is going to be called The Tuning. And it's just, and I just actually finished a track with Nancy Cohen groaning. We incorporated her literally groaning into the track. And so, yeah, you know, I'm going to be using some solfeggio frequencies, incorporating some of that stuff. Man, I would love to use plants in, you know, and to sing with plants. That I'm down for all of it. Trust me. Whatever he shows me, I'm down for. So maybe Steve will have to do something together.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. So
Daniel, I see you smiling. I know you've got something running
Well,
through your
I
mind.
just love, Karen, how you started out by saying nothing's off the table. Let's talk about it all. You know, and I love that because I mean, like I'm recalling a vision that a guy I interviewed, one of my first interviews, I was a near-death experiencer. He had a vision of the future. And so it would be people going out into their garden. He saw someone do this, plant a cabbage seed, sit there and meditate it, send love to this cabbage seed, watch within minutes this thing just develops and he picks it for his dinner. You know, and I tried this with some tomato plants that were not coming up. None of my seeds were coming up. And I sat down there, I meditated. I'm like, I'm sending a love and light to this whole tray of none a single seed had come up. The next morning, they were all this tall. I'm like, you know, that I was blown away. And so I am nurturing my tomato plants out there. I'm like, come on, guys, you can do it. You know, and you know, talking up. Have I sung over them yet? No. Maybe I should try that next.
Maybe you should try that, Daniel.
Yes.
Hey, Daniel, if you actually put seed in your mouth for about, I think it's 6 or 7 minutes, hold the seed in your mouth, plant that seed, and when it comes up, the fruit is actually the substance of that fruit will actually bring healing to your body because your DNA was actually put into the seed.
oh, come on.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Wow, that's freaky.
I love that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And another thing that's wild and crazy that I'd love to just bring on the table, since Laura, you're just going so deep. Thank you for that. I love you. I want to interview you, Laura. You gotta find me on YouTube. We gotta be friends. I'll interview
Mike,
you.
write that down too. Take note, Mike.
But I had an experience in my backyard where I'm like having a fire with some friends and we're like getting deep in the spirit where I'm prophesying over my friends. It's amazing. I'm praying in tongues and I walk around the fire next to this tree and all of a sudden the spirit of the tree, like a dryad, comes out to greet me, and she was stunning. She was beautiful. She was amazing. And I connected to her, and she was like showing me how delightfully she was carrying out the Father's purpose, you know, and it was just so beautiful. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I'm like, is this true for that fir tree over there? Can I go meet the fir tree? And I did. And Jesus Christ came and just like inhabited my being in just like a really special way, and he prophesied healing to the fir tree, imparting her feminine energy side, because he was very regal, he was very wounded, and he needed some healing, he needed some love, he needed a hug. So Jesus did that. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, just connecting to nature. And so I love the whole plants thing. Of course, anybody hearing like Steve, you talk about this, and it's like, oh my gosh, that sounds unbelievable. It kind of sounds weird or whatever. Like all these people could have these surface level judgments until you experience it for yourself.
Right.
You know.
When I was first exposed to it, it was actually through Bryan and Cindy. They were at a conference with us in Arizona with Carrie Browning that she had put on called Quantum Faith, and Mike Parsons was there, and Paula Benet, and there were a number of different people. But Bryan and Cindy had a booth right next to my booth with Nancy and I, and you know, we had our music for sale, and he had some of his music for sale. But he had these little devices that look like bamboo cell phones and headphones. And I put the headphones on and I said, what am I listening to? And he goes, you're listening to this plant. And Bryan, if I recall, it was a little mint or something like that. And, you know, I was like, what do you mean I'm listening to the plant? He goes, that's the plant playing. I said, so that's the recording of, he goes, no, that's playing live. And he said, here, hold the plant in your arms. And so when I did, the plant changed its tune, and I gently touched one of the leaves and the plant changed its tune again. So Bryan, you know, started introducing me more and more to this. And then I ended up out at their healing center called The Land and staying in their home with them. And we did some things together where I learned a bit more. And then I think even in Arizona, I traded Bryan some musical stuff for a device, a plant device. And if anybody out there is interested in these plant devices, it's called the Music of Plants. You can reach out to Bryan, and he'll put you in touch with how you get a hold of one of these devices. They're not cheap, but boy, I'll tell you what, in the music world, nothing's cheap, right? So it's like buying it's like having a synthesizer without keys. It's literally a synthesizer brain with all the patches and everything, and you can tune it and set it up so that you can play along with the key that you want to play with. But it's the plant that's providing the notes and the selection of those notes. And so as I began to do that, I started traveling with a plant named Rosie, who was a rosemary plant, and I traveled for the better part of a year with Rosie. We went through 17 states, and she led worship in a church in Houston, which was crazy. They literally asked me, can Rosie lead worship with our worship team? We don't want you to sing or play. We just want Rosie. And I was like, sure, that's fine. There was no ego thing for me. But one of the things I remember, we did a seminar with Gil and Adina, and Bryan and I were there, and Bryan made a comment. He goes, the difference with what Steve's done is he's traveled with the same plant, and he's gotten to know and form a relationship with this plant. And people thought I was crazy, but I literally did this. It was a phenomenal time. And then Rosie ended up getting burned very severely down in Galveston in 110-degree weather. And so she's on my back porch right now. We're trying to see if she's going to come back to life. Nothing so far. We can still see some Cambria is green, but I'm hoping that's not just moss from the Northwest here. But yeah, I'm traveling now with other plants, and Bryan and Cindy have recently encouraged me to play peace lilies. And so I've got a peace lily in our home now, and I'm playing that. I play this musically for on a regular basis, but Bryan and I are talking about putting together and staging an event with about a dozen or more plants singing in an ensemble, and Bryan and I accompanying that with guitar and keyboards and other things. And one of the things that we looked at doing, and this goes back to to Laura's comment about the untwisting of the DNA. Most people are not aware of this, but our cells each contain a strand of DNA, and that strand of DNA is compressed in a coil. They actually call it the sacred serpent because it coils like a snake. There's nothing evil about that. That's just the name that medical science had given it. But the DNA coil is very, very, very tiny in each of our cells. If we were to stretch one strand of DNA out, it would be 6 feet long.
Wow.
6 feet long. And so each of your trillion plus cells has a 6 foot long strand of coiled up DNA. And so you're talking, Laura, about unfurling some of those, uncoiling some of those, or all of them. And that's transformative to us. That becomes that metamorphosis that Mike talked about earlier. But the thing is, when we look at the DNA, it is a hexagonal quartz crystal shape.
Wow.
So it's no wonder we respond to things like rocks, minerals, crystals, etc. We resonate with them simply because of what it is that we are crystalline beings ourselves because of the shape of our DNA. It is in the form of a quartz crystal. And again, a lot of our music's coming from crystal things. A lot of our we're holding cell phones or computers right now that are being powered by.
Used to be, right?
What's that?
CD, didn't that used to be?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Watches.
All of that. And even recording tape back in the day was crushed minerals that were embedded into the mylar tape. So it like, we can't be afraid of some of this stuff. Everybody wants to start labeling things new age and all that. It's old age, guys. It's really old age. It's like Bryan and I, we're the older guy. Mike on this call, we're the older ones. And when somebody was talking earlier about senior citizens and going to a senior citizen home, I'd like, hey, watch that now, be careful.
Well, that's okay. I've already been kicked out of one church for being a heretic, and I'm proud of it. But no, we have to talk, because I have had so many, and I had this encounter with Noah where he began to talk to me about singing structures into being, spiritual architecture.
Right.
Singing. And because what was happening is, as I was closing my eyes and I would be worshiping, I'd begin to see structures form. I'd begin to see, sacred geometry, basically.
Yeah.
But I didn't I didn't know the function of it at the time. I would just see different shapes. And I mean, it's so trippy. If you study, the Holy Spirit was like, well, go look at a vocal cords. When they open, they form a triangle, right? And then, which we know the meaning of, the multiple meanings of what that stands for with the triangle. And then what's even stranger is he had me sitting under the roar of lions in the plains. They had to be wild, though. They couldn't be caged, she said. And I would listen to their frequency over and over and over. And I actually looked at the vocal cords of lions, and their structure is different. Their structure is a square, more like a rectangular square. And it's so crazy, because what they carry in sacred geometry is related. It's the function of a square, and our voices are the function of the triangle. It's just, it's layered.
Almost like a Merkaba.
Well,
Merkaba. I love it. The intersection of heaven and earth. I actually made the Star of David my Facebook profile picture. It's like they're pulling out the yellow star with, the David, the yellow star they use in Nazi days with no vax on it, But anyway, now that I have your attention, I love that, the Merkaba, the intersection of heaven and earth. It's like he's stooped lower to lift us up, and he's elevated us higher. It's just amazing, and we're spinning around in this vortex that looks like a sphere of consciousness, and it's so beautiful. And I love sacred geometry. There's so much to learn from it about Christ in sacred geometry. Now, years ago, like, the Lord started to cue me into raising our frequency into love, and he taught me about the 444 tuning, which related to the 528 hertz. I don't know, and it part of my mind is like, is this just, internet folklore and all this stuff? That's where part of my mind goes. I don't know about any of you. Have you gotten downloads about that? Have you gotten personal revelation? I mean, I know I have. I got personal revelation about it, and I'll just tell you how it got summed up. It was really cool, because we ended up recording our album in 444, and all in relation to the 528 hertz. The love frequency, or the tone of creation, and all this stuff. But I asked the Lord on the way to a church meeting one night about that. Like, Lord, do you have anything more to tell me about the 444? And it was amazing. So I get to church, and I walk in, and then a friend like stops me in the hall and just randomly says, Daniel, it's like this. Imagine a box 4 foot wide, 4 foot high, and 4 foot deep. I'm like, okay, you have my attention. And he's like, if God were to take one grain of sand that represented a loving thought about you once every second and drop it into the box, how long would it take to fill that box? I'm like, I have no idea. A year? And he's like, 120 something years or something, and like it was like well over 100. Like, okay, so the amount of lifetime, my whole lifetime, every second representing a loving thought. And so Psalm 139 tells us, how precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They cannot be numbered. I cannot even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand. All of them. All the grains of sand. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're talking about an infinite love that would just make you explode into a million pieces if you got the smallest little glimpse of it for too long. Like, whoa, raising our frequency into love. So this is part of our the awakening that's happening. We're awakening to that love, and love for one another. It's the tree of life, too.
Daniel, where you're discussing, Daniel, want to throw it over to Bryan to talk about the birth notes that he's put together, because there's something about, and some of you have heard me talk about frequencies, and you know that I have a thing about the whole frequency thing that's a little different than some, and that's fine. But I do believe that that all the frequencies matter, and Bryan's come up with something that is pretty spectacular. That the more I hear it, the more I hear of people's experiences with it. And so, Bryan, would you share a little bit about birth notes and where that came from?
Yeah, absolutely. Really quickly though, Daniel, I love what you're saying, brother. And I totally get it. The birth notes that Steve is talking about, I actually recorded those in 444 tuning. So and 440 tuning is the only tuning that you can get the 528 hertz, in. So some of these frequencies that we look for, you have to tune differently to get them. So I totally understand what you're saying, brother. It's awesome. But Steve's talking about several years ago, I went to a school of bioacoustics up in Ohio with a lady named Sherry Edwards, who's a pioneer in bioacoustics, life sounds, bioacoustics. And so it was kind of crazy, because the first 2 days we were there, it was almost like an advanced physics class. I had no idea why I was even there at that point, but Cindy looked at me at one point and she said, "Are you getting this?" And I'm like, "I don't think so." But anyway, on the third day, man, on the third morning, she began to speak about, and this wasn't even a part of her class, but she just started talking about how the universe cycles in tones. And so she had my attention at that point, and I just began to question her, and because I was in from that point on, man, I was in. So I got home and I began to record songs recorded in these tones, in these notes, and it's been really amazing. Of course, there's 12 of them. They coincide with the zodiac, Mazzaroth. The scriptures talk about, and everybody is born under a certain tone. So I recorded music in those tones, and you immediately just your body comes into harmony and balance just by hearing the music, because it remembers the sound that you were born under. Chances are, if you are singing in the shower, just a cappella singing in the shower, man, you're probably singing in your birth note. So everybody has one. And the cool thing we're finding out now is we're starting to use this in a lot of people who have gone through traumas, deep traumas. And let's just say they've lost a spouse or child, even a divorce. They can be really, really nasty. And what we're finding out and discovering over the past couple of years now is that when people are having difficulty getting past a trauma, someone passing again, or a divorce, the fact is they're missing that person's vibration. So what we're doing is getting these birth notes to people who've lost a spouse, and what they do, they listen to the music and they literally feel that person's vibration just by listening to the music. So the birth notes are very powerful. It's something we use every day here at our retreat center at the land. And it's I'm very grateful for that. I really am. I'm very grateful for that. And so the music, to me, it came straight from the throne room, because when I got done playing them, guys, I couldn't go back and play them at all. I just I just couldn't, because they were just so divinely given. So anyway, that's a little bit about the birth notes. So
It's
thank you,
great,
Brad.
Brian. Love
That's
that.
really confirming, Brian. I appreciate you sharing that, because a while back, the Lord began to just, he called them people's birth songs, and I began to hear people's songs. Does that, like the sets of frequencies, it would almost play, it almost sounded like a motif that would play like in a loop. And I began to hear them like as a baby was born or something, or I asked to hear the ones from my kids. But that's super confirming, because and that goes back, I believe, to Zephaniah 3:17, because that word Ranah, it's okay. Can we get a little weird here?
Come on, girl.
Okay, it's the same, the word Ranah, when he sings over us, it's that same Hebrew expression as when a man releases his seed during intimacy. Okay, so him singing over us is so much more than we think. He is literally releasing us as sons into this realm, with our scroll and the frequencies that are attached to it. And it sounds to me like it's connected to what you're talking about, Brian.
Come on, that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Tommy, you've been quiet over there. I need to give him some space too, let him share. So Tommy, your history, and I want you to tell a little bit of your story, because these guys don't know you, and I want you in the club with us. So
Yeah, for sure.
so
Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. What I want to say is Tommy's, and I think this is important. He zoned in on the youth, and I think it's much needed in the future of music and reaching the youth. So, Tommy, tell us some of the things that you've told me, and kind of let these guys know what
Yeah,
you've
for
been doing.
sure. So yeah, I guess I've been quiet because like rap, I mean, it's just a different kind of animal we're dealing with. Because like I don't really sing. Like on my hooks I sing, but like the main focus is just the lyrics. And I feel like music has many different purposes. For me, it's a very powerful tool which I use to release the word of God, to preach the gospel, to reach the youth, to evangelize. Even though I love it, I use it as worship. All the songs come from inspiration. Sometimes I even just get what I believe God is saying and just put that in the song. So whoever listens to it, that's a word for that person. So it's really like the spoken word of God for me that's reaching them. And like I'm a teacher too, so I'm around youth, like middle schoolers all day, and they're consumed with rap music. And rap music is like what they're all listening to. These people, there's mainstream artists that have millions of views and listens on YouTube, and then they come in and talk about the next day. So I feel like that genre is specific to reach a lot of these kids. And even at the ministry we're doing, just that they see that there's a rap artist, there a lot of them are just drawn to coming through because it speaks to them. It's just what they can relate to and flow to. And so I feel like it's a very powerful thing. And like I said, I've been experimenting. The frequency stuff is still pretty new to me. So on my next project, I'm definitely going to experiment a lot with it. When I play guitar, it's always in 444 as well. And so I want to start getting some of these tones in there. But I think a lot of it is just getting that substance on there and just getting the word out. Because that's another reason I wanted to get back into music, is because a lot of people just don't put the word in their songs anymore. And, you know, that's been a disappointment for me, because like a lot of people who used to have the word in their songs, they get a big platform and then now they don't even talk about Christ anymore. And so we got to bring back the word and got to bring back the substance and the presence in our music.
So Tommy, you've been out on the streets, and I mean, Tommy's been in the middle of situations where he's had gang members threaten him.
Yeah.
And but he's reached them, and like his students in school, they see him on YouTube and had no idea that he was doing rap music, and they're like, Mr. Kodel.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And I mean, look, Tommy, what you're hearing from like Laura and these guys tonight, just the verbiage that they're using would be awesome verbal rap music coming out of you. I mean, when you're
Definitely.
talking like DNA and, you know, boardroom stuff and things that they're talking about, that's a whole different language for the rap scene.
Yeah.
And I only know one other person that's tapping on that, and Truth Seeker's doing it. But like people in the realm that haven't heard that yet, you got a really open door to bring that into your scene. You know.
Yes.
But Tom, one of the other things is rap music has really pioneered this whole area of sampling
Mm,
and creating what we would call the ambient backdrop to the rap. So the words are key because rap is all about storytelling, but every story has a great soundtrack, as Laura C mentioned earlier. And so one of the things that I think I was hearing as you were talking was, what would it be like for you to incorporate plant music in rap? And the thing that's cool is you can, like with the plant machine, you can set the parameters and the tones, and you can actually go put in percussion and drums and things and you can drive a MIDI machine using the plant machine. It's a MIDI device. But also just some of the kinds of vocalizations and the sounds that Laura's doing. And Daniel, I'm not as familiar with your music, but I'm going to guess that all of us would have a piece of the puzzle that could be something that Tom could use to begin to create even greater, maybe unfamiliar sounds for his audience that would capture their attention and kind of distinguish the music that you're doing, Tom. So I just want to encourage you to man, go for it. I'm excited for you. And I love what you're saying about getting the word back into music. It's so vital.
Sure. Yeah. I definitely want to experiment. Like even when you're talking about plants, I was just thinking how cool that would be to have that in the background, you know, throw a beat on it and just have that frequency in there. So I think that's a great idea.
Tommy, have
Definitely.
you heard one?
I don't think I have. I think a while back I heard some stuff with the crystals in it and different rocks, but I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard plants. So I'm definitely interested in finding out more.
Steve, you don't have one hooked up, do you?
I don't have.
Is there a website that we could go check that out on, Steve or Bryan?
Hang on.
Bryan's going to hook us up. He's going to spin it.
Bryan's got one right there. That's the device.
My lavender plant might be a little stage fright, you know, I'm not sure.
We're not hearing it.
We're all sending intention to lavender. Release your sound. By the way, while Bryan's searching for that sound, everybody knows that kitty cats are little girls and puppy dogs are little boys. And that's why house plants are always usually girls. So if you're going to name your house plant, name it a girl name. And if it's a tree, you got to figure out how it's treating you as to whether it's a boy or girl. That's just the wisdom from this old man here.
Where's Robert plant?
Lick it, Bryan. You got to lick it.
I did. I licked it. Sometimes it helps if you get the leaf a little moist, but she's been singing the whole time.
What do you hook it up to? What is the process that is it reading hertz and then translating it into musical notes?
It has a probe in the soil and a clip on the leaf. It's reading the vibration of the leaf. So you're hearing a lavender plant right now.
Wow.
Wow.
So when you do things with it, then it kind of changes, doesn't it?
It changes all the time.
Okay.
It changes from the morning to noon to afternoon. It changes melody. Now the sound, I can choose the sound.
Right.
Again, like Steve said, it's kind of like a keyboard. I can choose the sound. But the melodies in the afternoon, you'll hear a lot of lower notes. In the morning, they'll start to they're very slow and start to go higher into the higher notes. But we're finding out that just listening to like a lavender plant, we know that lavender oil is very calming. It reduces stress and anxiety. And so what we're finding out now is that just by listening to a lavender plant, the same things begin to happen. So it's a very cool thing. I love it. I have 12 of these devices, and that's what Steve was talking about a little earlier. Doing a plant concert where there's no egos, no agendas, just these guys doing exactly what God created them to do, and allowing them to minister to us, because that's exactly what I think in the garden, Adam and Eve listened to the plants. They could hear them. There were beings of light, so they were able to take all of this in. I think Dr. David Stewart said it best. He said, "We've just forgotten, that's all." And I believe that the higher our vibration gets, and the better we get at getting it there, I believe that at some point we'll be able to hear them without the device.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
That is so cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Tommy, one of the things about these is that when you get them down to where you're interacting with them, if you send the vibration or the intention of love, or if you hold one next to your heart and you begin to release love to it, it drops into these deep low notes. It'll trigger subwoofers like crazy. And so for what you're doing, to be able to take some of that and work with it would just be phenomenal, because again, all creation's groaning, right? That's one side of it. And the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. So as you're on the street releasing the frequencies of the word of God, you're also then releasing the sounds of creation and healing coming from these leaves. And I just think that I saw very clearly you being able to incorporate some of this. So offline, Bryan and I can connect up with you and have another conversation about that. It'd be fun to have you be involved in some of the projects we're working on.
Yeah, you guys are stirring me up. I'm definitely interested. That's gonna be awesome.
Tommy cracks me up.
And Daniel, Lovett, you too, man. We'd love to get all of you guys, if you're interested in adding an addition to your music, man, just let us know.
Definitely. Yeah, just let me know where I could get one of those.
Heck yeah.
Yes, I see that.
You know, it's funny. I live amongst the trees, so I live on a canal with our house is completely engulfed in trees. And right before we moved in, a huge tree, I mean, they are so huge, fell on the roof of the house. And so they repaired it and et cetera. So I walked in and I began to like speak to the land. I was like, okay, trees, I'm partnering with you. I release all the angels that are sent and assigned to these trees. Here are the boundaries. I am a son of the Most High God, and as a son of Yahweh, you may not drop anything on the house. You may drop anything on the property if you need to, but nothing on the house. And we have had haven't even been here a year, and we've had like 2 or 3 really intense storms. And sure enough, they've dropped like huge branches, like right in the front lawn, but not on the house, because, you know, our job is to govern.
Yeah.
Right. Govern from the heart of the Father. And it's like partner to govern by partnering with them. So yeah, I'm all about.
That's awesome. Laura, I'm telling you a quick story. Steve has heard this one, but when I first got the device, Laura, Cindy and I was listening to a lemongrass plant on our back porch. We have coffee outside if we can in the mornings. And we were listening to a lemongrass plant. And in our backyard, we have all kind of fruit trees and stuff, figs, apples, all kind of stuff in our backyard. So anyway, Cindy said, let's go listen to the fig tree. And I said, okay. So we got up and walked out to the fig tree. I put the probe in the ground and clipped on a leaf. And I mean, this guy took off singing immediately. And so we were just listening to the, music for a few minutes, and fig season was actually over, but Cindy looked up and saw there was one fig, Laura, left on this whole tree. And she grabs that thing, guys, bites the whole thing off, nothing left but the stem, and she tosses it away. And this guy shuts off. I mean, she shuts down. The tree shut off. And wow. I looked at Cindy and I said, what have you done? She said, I didn't do anything. I just ate a fig. And I said, well, apparently you've pissed it off because it's not singing anymore. And guys, I'm telling you, this is honest truth. And she started speaking to this fig tree, and she said, I am so grateful for you. She said, you gave us a beautiful supply of figs all summer long. And she said, I'm so sorry. And she just began to bless this tree. And y'all, it started singing as soon as she started doing that. So
my gosh.
We are so connected. I love what Gil and Adina Hodges are doing, bringing, oneness into the picture. We really are connected with all that is. So anyway, I thought that was
I love that. And I will order one of those tonight. Do you actually broker them, or who sells them?
I'm one of only 4, I think maybe 5 distributors in the States. And I have 12 devices. Some of them are still in the box, still have the plastic on them. But the thing is, Laura, that when I ordered these, I ordered them and had them shipped to the conference that Steve mentioned earlier in Phoenix last year. And between customs and it was crazy what I had to pay to get them here. So they're around $700 if I provide them. But I think you can go to the Music of the Plants website.
Okay.
Running a special right now. So I'd turn you that way because you can save a lot of money.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? In order for me to get my money back, I would have to. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to keep all mine anyway for this concert, Steve and I are talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yes, go to the Music of the Plants website, and you can probably get a good deal on them right now. Are they still running this special, Steve, or do you know?
Yeah, it's 30% off. And I would encourage you, Laura, if you're interested, order the little $8 or $10 book that they have.
Okay.
Because it gives history and it gives you some history of plant music and research and things like that. It's well done. And, that we're talking about this concert idea. When I was with Bryan and Cindy a few weeks back, I had this open vision of a stage filled with plants, each one with its own device. And Bryan was sitting on stage right, and I was sitting on stage left. Bryan had his keyboard and some of his singing bowls and some percussion, and I had my guitar and singing bowls and percussion. But we were like the backup, players. It was the 14 plants or 15 plants that were playing that in an ensemble. And so I've actually begun writing out what I saw, and I'm about to send that to Bryan. But I can envision us creating events where we would come into an area and you would get to become like a guest backup musician as well. and blend your sound with the plants. And really what we're doing is we're honoring creation. Christopher Carter and I have talked a lot about this, and there's a thing about honoring the creation and the created, the plants and the spirit and the angelic realm around the plants that we've kind of forgotten about. But 400 years ago, that was the norm, and we're coming back to that now. And people think it's weird, but again, it's not new age. It's ancient age.
There
You
you
know,
go.
Isaiah says, look to the ancient paths and discern how to walk on them, and it'll go well with your life if you do that. And so, you know, I mean, I took this really far when I was traveling with Rosie. I had a car seat for her.
Love it.
I had a baby Bjorn, and I would walk in with this giant rosemary plant where you couldn't even see my face, and she was on her little front pack. And when I would walk into churches, people would laugh and think it was cute. When I would walk into metaphysical or new age communities, people would walk up and want to hug me and hug the plant, and they would start weeping because and I asked this one lady, she like went into this almost hysterical crying, and I said, oh, what is this triggered in you? She goes, I can't believe that you're honoring a plant in such a way. She goes, I cannot wait to hear what she sounds like.
Wow.
And, you know, this is somebody that's totally not predisposed to following Jesus or anything. So I actually had her come up during the demonstration that I did during the sound bath and hold the plant in her heart. And this thing took off, and we almost had to get her some smelling salts. She almost passed out. She was in such ecstasy.
Wow.
And afterwards I said, what was it about? And I did not talk about Jesus or anything. I said, what was it about you holding Rosie that created that level of ecstasy? And she said, the Christ stepped out from behind the plant and hugged me and kissed me on my forehead. And I've always wanted to engage with Jesus, but I've never been able to. And she said, you handed the plant to me, and suddenly Christ came from around the plant and embraced me. And the whole place went, whoa, you know.
Hey, Steve.
So good.
You can't make this stuff up.
No, it's so
So
good.
Steve, are you in your studio?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm in my VST studio. Yes,
Do you have a bowl there?
I do.
Will you play one for Tommy so he can get that sound?
Ah,
Yeah, it's cool.
do that. Let's see here.
And the reason why I'm saying that, some of our stuff has a that Mike's been working on has been having this Middle Eastern kind of flair to it with his
Nice.
guitar. And so like singing bowls and stuff would be a really cool little thing
Yeah,
to go
sounds
behind
fire.
it.
I've
Yeah,
heard this. It's cool.
This may overload the sound, but we'll see. So that's what we just used on my client virtually. And again, you can go to our website to get more information about that. But man, since I've started doing this since September of last year, I've done over 1,000 sessions with people live where they're laying on my table. And now I'm starting to do them virtually, and we're starting to see the same kind of effects taking place. So this is a part of the musical side of things. And when I've played the bowls, and Bryan and I've done some of this together, when we've played the bowls with the plants, look out. It's a trip. It's a real trip.
Do they change their tune? When
They can, but a lot of times what we will try to do is we will try to match them rather than expecting them to match us. One of the things that I loved about Bryan's early exposure for me with this is he said, Steve, don't expect you to lead like you've done in the past. Expect to learn to follow. that like these plants don't have ego. They're just singing the way God created them to sing. There's no agenda. There's no ego. And Bryan, that was so helpful. Such great wisdom from you for me, and I honored that because you're a studio session player, you're a band leader, a band member, a songwriter. You've been connected in Nashville and Hollywood and other places like that, and hearing you say, don't expect to lead, expect to follow, what was great wisdom for me.
Well, that's kind of a hard one to follow anyway, Steve, when we grew up performing and and knowing that we can play or sing in front of thousands of people or 10 people, it doesn't matter.
Right.
I grew up in a really perfection driven
Not super.
So to something like a plant I had to learn how to do that and just come in and undergird the plant actually with what I can do, and it's really a beautiful dance kind of thing, when you are a musician and let's just say you're a guitar player and you've done this before. I've watched you do this before. The plant would be playing certain notes and you play certain notes and then all of a sudden the plant starts playing those notes and you start playing others. You guys start working together and it's just a beautiful dance. And one of the things I wanted to share a while ago, and I almost forgot it, but the scripture that says the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. And that's so true. We're seeing that, guys. It's so true that we have scientific evidence now that a plant can literally scan your body and begin to play the notes and frequencies for your healing. Whatever's going on in your body, the plant can detect that. It can scan your body and begin to play the notes for your healing. It's science. We've already got the science on it. And you're talking about, Karen, you're talking about music going to another level.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. I mean, that's a beautiful picture to me of where we're headed. And we get to do this, guys. We get to go along and be a part of this. And so it's such a, Steve and I've talked many times before. We love where we are right now. And especially where we're headed. Because I thought this earlier too, Karen. I thought, you remember when Paul Young wrote The Shack? And there was a special part in that where he said, he goes into the kitchen and God's at the sink with the apron and all on. And she's kind of dancing a little side to side. And who is it? Mackenzie, the guy in the story, said, I really like that music. Who is that? And he names the group. And he said, well, I've never heard of those guys. He said, well, no, they've not here yet. So that's kind of where we are, guys. I think we're there now. And so are we getting to taste a little bit of this stuff? So it's a beautiful thing. Really is.
And that's why I invited Tommy because I wanted him to hear this and then share his thing. And then because like I said, he's got a really big doorway right there. And then see, Tommy, like you bring something like this with your music. I mean, you're going to be on the cutting edge of what's going on in your realm. And people are going to be like, where did that come from?
Absolutely.
I mean, you'll be so out of the realm, And so, I mean, it'll change everything for you,
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. This is amazing.
I mean, you could be the first guy on the forefront, the star walker.
Yeah, first dude to rap over a plant.
Yeah, I can see the album cover now. You're wrapped up in this giant set of vines,
Man, that's really awesome if you think about it.
I'm serious.
So,
after this, I'm gonna go sit in my greenhouse.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, do you have something that, Mike, did you want to say anything?
I think this whole plant thing is very intriguing. We may need to look into that.
Yeah.
I wanted to say something that is on the beating path, Laura, that you were talking about. When I first moved into the house I'm in now, I had some people come and pray over the property. And it's somewhat related to what you were saying, but I have such a peace wherever I'm at on my property.
Mm.
And it doesn't matter if I'm cutting grass or I'm just sitting looking out the window or I'm sitting out back. It's when you have something like that done, it just changes the whole atmosphere. And wow, what you said really reminded me of that. And we've prayed over other properties in the past, and it's like it's a pleasure to go back because there's such a peace. It has been rid of any kind of demonic activity. Anything that is not of God is not there. It's just so relaxing and peaceful. It's like me laying on that masseuse table, listening to different tones while I'm getting kinks and knots taken out of my back and my neck and stuff like that. It's like,
Well, Steve will
yeah,
hook you up.
I know, but it's just too bad you're thousands of miles away.
Yeah, that's what I say too, Mike.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing like a good massage with the right tones. And that
I
that
kind of,
is that is relatable right there. Just
I
listening
kind
to
of feel
those
like I hear
tones.
the Holy Spirit saying Steve needs to kind of move a little more to east and south.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm just throwing that out there, Mike. I'm not,
I haven't had dinner yet, but you can all bite me. I don't want to drive anywhere right now. I don't want to drive to the store. I logged the last couple of months. I logged 14,000 miles on my car
Day.
in about 2.5 months.
Wow.
But it's
Yeah.
all good.
You deserve a break today, my brother.
Yeah.
So, Bryan, tell
Yes.
everybody how they can get a hold of your music and what you and Cindy are doing.
Absolutely. You can go to kingdomcomenow.org, and that's our website. And it has the land, what we do there. It also has a little tag up there that says Created Breath Productions. And that's all of my music. There will be all that's on there now. I have 12 recorded plants from Costa Rica. We were there last year, and I was able to record, or actually right before COVID hit. But anyway, I recorded 12 medicinal plants there. I have some really cool stories we can share next time we get together. And there's also one called Energies Within, which is the seven seals that go up the body, the back of the body. People call them chakras. We call them energy centers, whatever fits your thing. Those songs are recorded in those tones. Everything has a tone, so we've been able to find out what those are and record music there, and also the birth notes on there. So just check it out. Would love to have all you guys come visit us down in Mississippi. Just not in the summer. We'll all go to Steve's place in the summer. So spring, fall is great though.
Yep, it is.
How about you, Laura? How do people get your stuff?
Oh, I put everything for free on YouTube. And then for anyone who wants to trade, I just end up putting it on Nancy Cohen's website, which is global, I think globalascension.com. I think it's Global Suns now, but it's under product on Nancy's things. But it's just Laura C. Worship and on YouTube. So
and Kingdom Talks is using one of your songs for the
that's right.
intro.
Are they still doing that? Oh,
Yeah.
Good. The Suns Are Rising one? Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
So, Daniel, I know you have some things out there.
Isn't that fun? Yeah, my wife and I have put out our last album, Reflect Love, recorded in 444. It's at reflect.bandcamp.com or reflectworship.com, and you can follow links to arrive there if you want to learn more about us, what we do. And we also I also have a website called thechristianmystic.org where I'm writing a book, which I'm going to have to rename because the host of heaven literally told me a couple of times now, name it The Mystic One. We're going to teach you more about oneness. We're going there. So Yeah, so you can download a sample of it though right now at thechristianmystic.org, which is super
Wow.
fun. I got a Facebook tribe, the Christian Mystic, which I'm going to be doing more with. Sometimes I just take time away and I like go spend time with my tribe. I'm like the tribe's masseuse myself, and the Lord answered my prayer the other day, meeting this older man who does the sound bowl healing, thing. Anytime I go over there, he's like, "All right, stand here, and I'm gonna do this," and I'm like, "Wow, thank you."
Now you can put him in your music.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he has some lovely chants. Like he has found how, like, in other cultures, like with some of their chants and how they relate to Christ. And he's like,
Mhm.
this is the true meaning behind this. Guys, let's start honoring other cultures and how Christ has been reaching out to them throughout all the centuries. And this is like a new way of like evangelizing, is just understanding. It's like, oh my gosh, and Christ is everywhere, and all truth is God's truth. So if it's in the Tao, it's in this and that, whatever, samadhi. I was just talking with somebody earlier today about that very thing, about we're awakening into Christ, hopefully. And I think that is in the restoration of all things. That's where it's going to end up, if there might be bumps along the road for any of us, which there's certainly been a lot of bumps along my road. But it's so magical and wonderful to come into the fullness of who Christ is. So that's what excites me and floats
And
my
if you're
boat.
in the
That's what
location where Daniel's at, he also tunes pianos.
Oh.
Yeah, if you're in the Appleton, Wisconsin area, which, I have tuned a piano to 444. Normally, it's like, okay, it's got to be a really well built piano to hold that extra tension to do that. Oftentimes I will actually detune it to something more agreeable too, but yeah.
Tune mine down to 432, Daniel.
Yeah, 432.
There we
That's
go.
what I do. That's what I do. 432 with pianos most of the time.
That's where we're at.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So Tommy, tell them where they can get your things out.
Yeah, you could get the Unveiling new album on any major music platform, iTunes, Spotify. I'm on YouTube, Instagram at Tommy Kodel. And yeah, you could go check it out.
Steve, you're next.
You can get stuff. I've got a guitar CD that's like a guitar bath. You can get that on Apple Music. It's called Stirring the Waters in the House of Mercy by Steve Hampton. You can also go to my website, which is Crystal Tones Healing. So tones with an S, crystaltoneshealing.com. And there's 4 of the sound baths that I'm doing with crystal tone bowls, bronze bowls like you heard earlier, and other percussion. There's a big gum-along nipple gong that is spectacular. And then stay tuned, because we're going to be uploading for download 5 new recordings that we did up at Nancy Cohen's Center. And Laura, you'll love this. We did one of your buddies playing a Native American flute.
Oh, Miles.
Miles did a fabulous job.
He's
And
so good.
the last thing that we did was only 17 minutes long. We'll have to probably loop that, but we just used the Koshi chimes, which I'll have to jump out of my chair and grab one of these little chimes. These are amazing. They're made in France. They're made out of bamboo.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know whether you can see down there or not, but the chimes don't move. There's a little acrylic striker. But we had 10 different frequencies of these chimes. Each one has 7 to 8 notes in them, but they're all set at different frequencies. And so we did that in a U shaped. We had 10 of those being played. It was Nancy's grandson. He was 16-year-old. I'm drawing a blank. Anyway.
Cody?
Cody, thank you. It was Cody holding 4 of them, me holding 4 of them, and and then my recording engineer holding two, and then Miles weaved himself in and out, walking in and amongst the chimes with the microphone capturing the whole thing. And we got to 17 minutes, and I went like this to my engineer. I'm like, and he's like, what? And so he shuts the machine off, and I literally went over backwards, and so did Cody. The anointing was so strong. So that one's yet to be released too, but we heard a little bit of that on playback, and we were like, Miles and I just started weeping. It was so powerful.
I can't wait to hear it. I feel like we've all just like, the tip of the iceberg of the conversations that we could all have.
We sure haven't finished yet, and that's for sure. I'm going to close the show out, but I want you guys to stay on a few minutes after I stop.
Okay.
But if you can get the Elastic Army Band music by going to the elasticarmyband.com. You can purchase our music there. We just put out a release called Mysteries. And you can also see us on Anchor, Spotify. Our shows and our music are there. Also on the website, our past shows with different guests that we've had on so far. You can go back and listen to those. They're really good. Tommy's been there. You guys I haven't done y'all one-on-one yet. So that's coming. And so pretty soon, we'd like to maybe get together with all you guys and do something online for everyone. Everything's been tamped down, so let's get them amped up. So we'll talk about that afterwards. So everybody out there, thank you for joining with us tonight. We appreciate all of you guys, and we appreciate all of you here that spent time with us tonight, talking to our viewers and our guests. And this will replay on Kingdom Talks Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. If you missed it or would like to go back and watch it again, you can watch it there. So thank you guys, and you guys stay on with me. So good night. Thank you for joining.